Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm John Campbell, Chair of the Tenant Services Committee, and we are about to start our meeting. It's scheduled to go for a little over 2 hours. We may conclude sooner than that. I will ask for an approval of the agenda, and at this time, I will ask if there are a number of items where we have deputations. We have deputations on 2D, 2F, 6CE, and then we'll have a presentation on from the Office of from the Commissioner of Housing Equity. And I will ask if there are any other items that people wish to hold at this time. Otherwise, if there are any other items that people don't wish to hold, then we will move to approve them. Uba, are there any items or Marcel, any items on the agenda that you wish to hold for discussion other than the ones that I've mentioned and that are being held for deputations? No? Okay, I would like to hold item 6B, the TCHC provision of internet access to all TCHC households. And I would like to hold item 6D, which is the community impact programs. And then I will ask for approval of the agenda as it's been given. So an overall approval of the agenda moved by Councillor Nunziata. All in favor? All right, that's approved. Are there any declarations of possible conflict of interest? Councillor Nunziata?
You held down 6B, and I believe that
Yes.
there's a presentation on that, and I like to, yeah, I understand there's a deputation. So I have to declare a conflict, because
Okay.
I have a member of my family that works in technology services.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so that's noted by the staff. And can I have a motion to confirm the meeting minutes of September the 14th? Uba, can you move that motion? Okay, moved by Uba. All in favor? Thank you. And then we have the first item we have then is in the consent agenda, the Q3 tenants first update, where we have a deputant.
And the first deputant, I believe, is Mr. Lohman. Mr. Lohman, are you on the line and can you hear us?
I am on the line, yes.
You have 5 minutes for your deputation, and you
Good morning,
proceed
Mr.
at
Lohman.
any time.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Campbell. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Mr. Sharma, Ms. Penny, and committee members. Thank you for this opportunity to address the committee. My name is Bill Lohman, and my apology for the late night reading. Let me begin by saying that I do believe the integrated service model is a great idea and will be a huge benefit to the living in place for communities once it is fully and rightly implemented. And I've seen much positive effort going into it on many fronts. My concern is about what is actually being implemented and how. This Tenant's First update states robust, collaborative, and ongoing communication with tenants and staff is a cornerstone to this project, and a successful transition will not be possible without it. And they claim that Toronto Housing is committed to doing everything possible to ensure the transition is successful. And also that tenants will have direct involvement in implementing a system that best meets the needs of seniors. Toronto Housing is working with tenants to develop a new engagement
Chair,
model.
there's somebody's phone. Could
Yes.
you stop the time, please, for this
Yes. Yeah, can we put my
gets off
time
hold.
on hold while this,
I've put your time
phone is
on.
ringing?
Sorry, Mr. Lohman, I put your time on hold.
Oh, there we go. Somebody. Oh. Okay, I think we're good.
Okay,
Mr.
we're
Lohman?
back. Okay,
We're
Yes,
back.
thank you. Thank you. Okay. Tenants, they say tenants will have direct involvement in implementing the system, and that Toronto Housing is working with tenants to develop a new engagement model. And I would say, really? It sounds more like an erroneous cut and paste from the Youth and Family Engagement refresh, because that ain't what's occurring in the 83 senior buildings. The attached list of the unanswered questions that I sent you was requested by the seniors board, and they're the voice concerns of about 14,000 senior tenants who have been silenced by a deliberate for them but not with them agenda. These lists are just representative samplings of the continuing disdainful manner which senior tenants' questions are treated, and the systemic lack of accountability by Toronto Housing and city staff to provide the same level of inclusion, fairness, and regard for senior tenants as they have and do for youth and families. They dispute the disingenuous reporting that speaks only to advancing a unitary agenda that fails to address the absence of any measurable tenant input to the city staff's ISM model. Isolated and silent senior communities make an easy mark for unscrupulous application of the ISM agenda to abet self-serving interests of outside stakeholders. This is choosing to be dismissive of a client's rights and needs in order to make quid pro quo deals to satisfy the wants of outside agencies by robbing seniors of their common spaces for agency exclusivity. The silencing treatment of seniors in the 83 buildings is discriminatory, and the appropriation of common space access by irrigating the right of tenant leases for agency benefit without consultation, due regard, and due process is fraudulent, and it's actionable. We are seeking the only productive way forward, and including the voice of senior tenants in the transition process is the only positive pathway to a mutually agreeable resolution. We need your insight, integrity, and insistence to stop the steal of our dignity, our voices, and our self-worth as seniors in Toronto. For your information, this week is the first time that this redundant Phase 1 information, which was promised in September, was shared with STAC members. Over the past year, STAC members were not invited to review a single policy, and making suggestions to letter syntax is not advising the policy. A question you may want to ask senior management: why did they feel they needed 17 staff to present the Phase 1 implementation? And how does this staff approach comply with the accountability framework and the shareholders' direction? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lohman. Are there any questions of the deputant?
Yes, I have some, please, because this
Ms.
is,
Fletcher?
as we know. Thank you very much. Could you just tell, I believe the stack was set up by the city as part of the tenant's first transition of the seniors. Is that right?
That is correct, and it's stated in the the integrated service models accountability framework that STAC be
okay.
there.
Thank you. So that's a requirement. And are you telling me that you have not, and STAC was not, your role is to advise, so it's to use your expertise and as seniors in the corporation to be able to guide through this phase of leaving TCH, setting up the new corporation, et cetera, et cetera. You didn't have a meeting, a STAC advisory meeting for a year?
We've had a number of STAC meetings, but as previous deputations have pointed out, those they have been geared towards things like the seniors newsletter, logos. We have touched on numerous items that, but only superficially. We've done brainstorming on different items again, but we are not privy to the information that other STAC members may be sending in, with their comments or opinions. So basically, what we have here is a body that has been used superficially, and not to the intent that it was designed for. Because as I pointed out, the implementation of Phase 1 We just received that information this week. So we've
You,
not been
sorry,
able
just,
to
I just
advise
wanna
on
go
that
over
implementation.
Sorry, Bill,
Yes,
Mr. Lohman, you
yes,
received the information on the implementation of phase one after it was implemented. Is that what you're saying?
yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We received that information this week. We have not been able to implement on anything because we have been asking since March.
So let me just ask about the senior service coordinator position as the stack. Was that a discussion to get advice on the important elements of that job? Was that ever a discussion?
We were not involved in, we had no role in the creation of that position. We had one meeting where we talked about it, and this was back in January of last year, where we spoke about it, about what the role would be. And we were supposed to have a deep dive into what the role would be, but that never occurred.
So your advice wasn't sought just around the elements of that. That's what I'm hearing, right? Okay.
Yes, we were, it was brought to our attention after it was already designed and in place.
Okay, thank you. And so I just want to, I'm just reading your written deputation, quite interesting in there. So I just think, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to refer this deputation and written deputation and oral deputation to the CEO. Some of the questions that Mr. Lohman has raised, I think deserve to be looked at a little deeply. Of course, there is the Seniors Corporation that's set up, but it's not functioning as far as managing any issues about tenants. And as well, our CEO can be clear with the tenants first team at the city what the role of the stack is. And I believe that 2 members of the new Seniors Corporation are stack members or were stack members, and they were selected. So there's a great synergy there. And this has been the advisory, it's the only advisory that we have that has a tenant advisory role in the creation of the new corporation. And the board also has oversight. Our board has oversight that this is being rolled out in a careful way. So I think that we should have some of that clarified, including did they get phase one implementation data after it was implemented or what their role was there? Number 2, that this discussion about the community service coordinators, which was a new role, I would have assumed that there would have been a great amount of input to look at what seniors felt they needed in their buildings. Apparently that didn't happen. So this would just be helpful to, and Stack hadn't been, I don't believe Stack had been consulted for quite a while. And
So,
now
Councillor
they're back in the
Fletcher,
so I would like to refer that to our.
right, okay, well, Mr. Sharma, and we don't need a response now, but he is obviously listening to the deputation and to your comments, and I'm sure we'll take note and act accordingly. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lohman. Very much appreciate your deputation today. The next deputy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next deputant is Anita Dressler. Is Ms. Dressler on the line? Does not appear, Dara, that we have.
Sorry, just Christine, you're muted. You'll need to unmute so that they can hear Ms. Dressler. Why don't we, I'm going to suggest that we come back to Ms. Dressler.
Okay.
While we sort that out. And then
Sure.
the next deputant that we have scheduled is Mr. Avila Velarde on item 2F.
Right, and Dara, I just want to step back. We approved the agenda, and what I intended to do was hold certain items and have the other items that were not held.
That's what I
approved.
understood.
All right.
Yes.
So I'll just confirm that what has then, and I also wanted to hold the violence reduction program update. So the items held for discussion then, or with deputations, are item 2D, for which we've just heard a deputant, we have one more, 2E, 2F, and then items 6B, C, D, and E, item 7, and that would leave that what's approved by the committee are items 9, the Seniors Housing Unit Southeast Region Tenant Experience Survey, item 8, TCHC response to OACH systemic recommendations, items 6A and 6F, and then the board and committee meeting rules and procedures, and then the item 4, the Community Safety Advisory Committee Chair's Report. Is that?
That's what I had as well.
And then business arising. All right, so I'll just,
Sorry, Dara, sorry, Mr. Chair.
yes,
Is that, I think maybe I just need to hold the tenant experience in.
that's fine.
Southeast. Thank you. Based on Mr. Lohman's deputation. Thank you.
Okay, and that was item,
Said
It's item
6.
9.
Item 9.
Okay, to be held. Okay, that sounds fine. Okay.
And can you just clarify about the OACH? We're going to get that.
Yes, we're going to
presentation,
have,
correct?
for item 7, there will be a report from Ms. Summers, okay?
And could we also get an update? Never mind. It's okay. Fine. Thank
All
you.
right, okay. So what then is it, what are we doing then, Dara, about Ms. Dressler and her deputation on tenants first update? Is
Ms.
she on the
Yan?
line?
Ms. Yan? I can hear Christine trying to join her, I think, to the meeting, but I think we're still working on the technical issue there.
Okay.
So do we want to move to Mr. Avila Velarde on item 2F?
Well, no, we'll go to, well, first of all, we
Oh,
need a motion
yes.
we need a motion to approve the tenants first update, moved by Councillor Nunziata. All in favor? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask that we have a fundamental, somewhere along the line, maybe at the board, understand our oversight role over the tenants first project, and particularly the seniors unit migration. Thank you. But we'll talk about that under the Southeast, but I'm not sure that we all understand our critical oversight role here.
Okay.
So, Mr. Campbell, just before you take the vote on item 2D, I believe we have Ms. Dressler back.
Oh, perfect. All right. Okay, that's great.
Christine, Ms. Dressler, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Oh, that's great. All right. Hello, Anita. That's John Campbell here,
All
the
right.
chair of the committee. Please go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
All right. Good morning. You can hear me now, right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Please proceed. Oh, now we can't hear her. Anita, we can't hear you.
I believe Ms. Dressler dropped the line again. I'm gonna call her.
Okay.
Thanks, Christine. Can I suggest that we hold item 2D until we can get her back for another
All right.
attempt, and then we can move on?
Okay, so on item, moving to the violence reduction program update, I just wanted to hold this. And because I wanted to ask staff, in the report, it indicates that the decision was made to suspend the hiring of 12 VRP special constables. And as of September 30th, 2021, there were 16 vacancies for the VRP special constables. I wanted to know, you know, how that's impacting our ability to provide safety and security to these neighborhoods. And if that was a decision by the board, and I'm just wondering if was there any timetable to revisit that decision?
Mr. Chair, the CSU staffing update that you're referring to, contained within the report, outlines that we have filled the gaps as required through third-party security guards to continue to provide service in those communities. The decision to hold the 12 VRP special constables, the hiring of permanent staff into those positions was directed by Tenant Services Committee initially. The Community Safety Advisory Committee has been formed. Chair Fletcher has chaired 2 meetings to date, and the role of CSU in supporting and providing community safety across the portfolio is being considered in that subcommittee, which will provide advice to Tenant Services as to when and how the positions are filled. So the committee is very active. Chair Fletcher could speak to that, and we're starting to assess the best model to provide community safety across the portfolio. So
the report acknowledges that third-party security guards are sort of a stopgap measure and are not in a position to develop relationships with members of the community, as are permanent staff. And I would have expected some sort of a recommendation to reinstate those positions. But so does that have to, or do we have to wait for the advisory committee to make that recommendation, or can I guess the Tenant Services Committee could make that recommendation right now?
That is, Mr. Chair, a matter for the committee.
Right.
It is the role of CSU and community is being studied through the subcommittee that was formed, and I'll be looking for the work of that committee to guide this issue.
All right. Okay. Fine. We'll await that some report from that committee then before we take any further steps. I guess the other comment that I had, and we spoke about this the other day, and I sent a note to Nadia Gueva, and that is that I would find it beneficial and helpful if, when reporting on programs that we are working to, where we have 22 people, with employment opportunities, where we have various programs ongoing that involve, clusters of 30 or 20 or 100 people, that we receive a breakdown by gender. And then we know, so we know if we are reaching, for example, in some of these violence reduction programs, if we are reaching young men. And I don't know if I don't expect I need a motion to move that, but I think that would be a worthwhile undertaking. I'm happy to hear any comments from other committee members in that regard. Anyone have any other comments? All right. So then
I do, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Firstly,
Councillor Fletcher, we can't see your camera.
I know, can't. I'm
Okay.
almost out of battery.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that, number one, the City of Toronto is doing a review of the CSU, and we had that presentation to see the terms of reference at our committee. So it's not just the committee. That was a motion approved by the board, number one. Number two, I agree with you about the tracking. So we have these new positions, and we need to track what the effectiveness of them are with these workers that we've hired. And three, nothing is more important than figuring out, as we got that list of communities, because again, just recently had a young man killed who was just basically taking out recycling or standing under a light. And this is happening more and more. And I believe this is one of those issues that our board needs to be seized with. So we'll have that report coming forward shortly from the advisory committee to this committee.
All right, great. Okay. Okay, can I have a motion to approve item 2E, the Violence Reduction Program update, moved by Councillor Nunziata. All in favor? Thank you. And then,
Believe we have Ms. Dressler back again.
oh, we do. All right, okay. Ms. Dressler, are you there?
Good morning, yes.
Okay, hopefully we can keep you this time. Please.
The gremlins are working.
Right, okay, great.
Anyway.
Thank you, Anita. Please proceed.
All right. Thank you. Good morning, Chair and members of this committee. During these trying times of COVID, many things have occurred. Tenants First and management are moving forward with their agendas. Unfortunately, it's supposed to be about us, but planning is happening without us. The seniors are the losers. We have had our dignity taken away. We feel that your agenda is moving us into a state of patient in a nursing home. Agencies are a wonderful source of programs, but only if the agency is willing to work collaboratively with the tenant leaders. Most programs by the agencies are not what we want or need. Digital learning or art classes, hello?
Yes, you're still. Yep.
Digital learning or art classes versus medical and food services is a joke. Community leaders would like to be shown that you believe in us and that we are respected. We are knowledgeable volunteers. In most senior buildings, interaction is the missing point. It is possible for distance to be obtained. When you open a community room for someone to take a book or a newspaper to read and be outside of their unit, this stops isolation and depression. Allow two tenants to play chess or cards. Every little thing that the agency does not seem to realize is the important part of programming for seniors. Agencies give programs that not all seniors want, and in many cases cause a state of exclusiveness rather than the policy of inclusiveness. No consideration is given to what we want. Tenants First appears to have an agenda of one size fits all. This is so wrong. Each building is like a little village with different demographics, different needs and wants, different cultural and social values. Yes, I agree. Certain things should be one size fits all. Buildings that are clean, well-maintained, and in good repair, security being available, cooperative staff. A little compassion goes a very long way. You have forgotten that many of us are proud, independent souls with some life left in us. The dismissive attitudes are concerning. Many community leaders are being left to then feel that all the work that they have accomplished in their buildings while working collaboratively with staff is the forgotten past. The chaos of transition is playing a marked impact on your senior tenants. Change is hard for many. Please remember, we should not be pushed aside. There has to be a human element when you are making plans for us. Start including us. Please do not say that you communicate. I beg to differ with you. Every building needs translated material in the top 2 or 3 languages, and many of us are not computer literate. We like to read and digest the message sent to us by you in our own time or with our families. When we speak up about the things that irk us, do not toss it into a garbage can. We are sending a message of frustration and are asking for honest, responsible help. As I reread my deputation this morning, I quickly realized that all of you, please be careful. Deciding for us without including us, you might end up in our position, controlled and put out to pasture. One day you might find yourself in the same pasture. Life has a funny way of twisting fate. One day you are up and the next day you are down, with others deciding things for you. Please decide responsibly and include us. Thank you very much for the time that you've allowed me to have this deputation. And please stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the deputation, Anita. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Okay, seeing none. Well, I'm sure that we have a new CEO, and I'm sure he's been listening very carefully to your comments and suggestions. Thank you again, Ms. Dressler.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll have a motion then to approve the Tenants First update, which we haven't done, moved by Councillor Nunziata. All in favor? All right, thank you. And the next item we move on to is the overview of the community safety unit. Given that there's the work being done by the committee, I don't have any, the safety committee, I don't have any further comments. So if there are no questions on that
Sorry.
particular item.
We do have Deputant Mr. Avila is
Oh,
has
yes,
asked
I'm
to
sorry.
on.
Yes, I just see that. Yes, yes,
Yep.
Mr. Avila.
Yes, we have a deputant.
Yes, and do we have Miguel on the line?
Yes, I am. Can
Hello,
you hear
how
me?
are you, Miguel?
Good, thank you.
Very good.
John, I've been listening to your comments, and I gotta say something. Prior to COVID, here at 220 Oak Street, we used to have every 2 months community safety updates. And at the time, we used to invite the G4S security staff and their supervisors to build up relationships with community members. I personally believe that is lacking on the meetings right now. So if this board can make this committee can make a motion to address this lack of invitation to G4S, that will be helpful. All right, so let's get to the item that I'm here for. So listen, I am happy to say that the freezing of the special constables will result in good payoff for our residents, because I think what's happening here with Toronto Police Services 51 Division, many of the calls that used to go through them for wellness check and mental health calls are being diverted now to the specialists that they can address those issues. So if you have CSU officers coming to 220, which you do on a regular basis, I will say 3-4 times a day, yes, why not incorporate the same model of the mobile crisis intervention unit that is modeled from the Toronto Police Services. That way we compare crisis response people, to de-escalate situations. I also disturbed to hear from Alan Britton, the current director, that the current staffing of sergeants, the CSU office, are former police officers from all across the country and even overseas. Now, this is a very worrisome thing for me, because I'm a community activist, and as you probably know, Francis Nanciata has seen me going to police services board meetings, speaking about accountability and transparency of the police services board. As a result of many actions by the community, the board voted to equip police officers with body-worn cameras. So that is something I mentioned to Jack Sharma when I welcomed him to Regent Park in a meeting to tell him that in order to assure accountability from the CSU officers, knowing that many are former police officers, and we don't know their record. The public doesn't have access to their files. And as you know, there is not a federal database that lists all former police officers that were discharged or dismissed or terminated by violations of human rights and police brutality, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And many, my friend, they only receive it a slap on the wrist, and they move on to another police service enforcement unit like yours. So that is my concern. So Jack, in order to ensure problems, to avoid problems in the future and legal issues, please equip your officers with body-worn cameras to ensure, that there is transparency. Okay, because as I said to you, you guys come to my building like 3-4 times a day, and some buildings in Regent Park don't have cameras on every floor. By the way, the stairways are missing, the hallways. So it's about the security of the person and the security of the officer himself too, from defamation, for he or she said this and blah blah blah, and to get to the point. And what else I can suggest you guys? Yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Okay,
And
thank you, Miguel.
I'm
Appreciate your,
open to questions.
thank you. Have a great day. Appreciate your deputation today. Are there any questions on the report? Okay, seeing none, motion to approve. Councillor Nunziata, all in favor? Thank you.
John, I have a quick question.
Yes,
Sorry.
go ahead.
And I think Miguel came to this board and this committee and different committees and board meetings, the same concern and asking if they can warn the cameras. So is that something maybe we can take back and look into it and think about it, Jack?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. And as Councillor Fletcher had indicated earlier, there is a review of the community safety unit and our approach going forward. And I think that this should be a part of that consideration. And I'll ensure that working with COO, we ensure that this topic is broached as part of that review.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we've approved the item, and then the next item up for discussion then is item 6B, the TCHC provision of internet access to all TCHC households.
Okay, Mr. Chair, it's Councillor Nunziata. I believe
Yes.
that there's a presentation on this and I declared a conflict, so I'm going to shut my video off.
Okay, all right. That sounds fine. And on this particular item, I just was hoping to have the COO just briefly outline what staff is intending to do in regard to the common areas. If you could do that, please, Sheila.
I can, Mr. Chair, but we do have a brief presentation.
Oh, we
for
do.
you,
Okay, great.
if that would be acceptable to the committee. And Nadia Govaya, our Director of Programs and Partnerships, will be presenting with staff from Connect TO.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's proceed.
Thank you. I will share my screen. Excellent. So thank you, Sheila. I would first like to introduce my co-presenters, Boyd Dyer, Director of Smart Buildings and Energy Management for Toronto Community Housing, and Michelle Miseru, who you may remember from his presentation to TSC on this topic last year. He's now a management consultant with the City of Toronto's Connect TO initiative. We've also been working closely with Alex Zhu, Connect TO project manager, who is on vacation and was unable to join us today. We are here to provide an update on TCHC and Connect TO's effort to expand internet access for TCHC tenants. Upon formal direction from the board in November 2020, we launched a TCHC interdivisional group of staff, including IT, legal, operations, and facilities management. The team has been working to explore a variety of options for internet access for tenants. The team met with a few internet service providers to get a sense of what could be possible for wide-scale program delivery, as well as a short-term pilot. We continue to work with service providers to offer more affordable expanded options for our tenants, including an amended Rogers Connected for Success service offering that will provide additional package options for increased speed and bandwidths for households. We have also explored funding options for long-term implementation of in-suite internet access and continue to work closely with Connect TO's team to explore long-term sustainable funding options. In the spring of 2020, we also worked with Connect TO to secure funding through the Mayor's Office for a common space internet access pilot that Boyd will speak to. Through our discussions with service providers, it does appear that tenants have a greater level of internet access than previously thought. However, more data and formal research is required to validate this. Additionally, it must be made clear that internet connectivity for some households comes at the expense of other necessities, and access is often precarious in nature and may not meet the needs of the household. Therefore, connectivity rates does not tell the full story. Through our tenant survey, we were able to add 2 questions, and they're indicated in the presentation as well as the report, to get a better sense of what the barriers to internet access are for our tenants and how TCHC can best support these. For example, if tenants are provided internet access but lack the computer literacy or devices to pursue it, they will remain disconnected. The questions were used in a 2021 StatsCan study, so we will also be able to compare our rates to the general public. I will now turn it over to Boyd to speak more about our common space pilot.
Thank you, Nadia. So in February 2021, as part of the city's Connect TO initiative, the mayor announced $2 million of investment to go towards expanding internet access, including Toronto community housing buildings. This funding aims to provide 1 year of common space internet to approximately 100 to 152 TCHC buildings. To date, we have implementation. We have begun implementation and have worked out a rollout schedule that will have these buildings connected over the next year, starting in 2022. TCHC will be able to hire 3 project managers that will be responsible anywhere between 33 to 35 buildings per project manager. So this program has already begun. It plans to start approximately in Q1 of 2022. And at this point, I will turn it over to Michelle, who will speak further.
Good day, everybody. There's a point here that Boyd already touched on, which was the expansion of the rollout of public Wi-Fi, common space Wi-Fi. So I won't speak to that. There are a number of initiatives that we are currently juggling in within the Connect TO portfolio that could directly intersect with TCHC and support these initiatives. One of them is exploring a direct subsidy option, which is the idea of being able to provide household level support that tenants, residents, or recipients could self-direct. It might not necessarily be a fixed broadband cost that would be problematic for a household. It could be a mobile service cost that could be problematic. So we're trying to explore options for a direct to recipient and self-directed subsidy as one of our initiatives. We're currently under review in the completion phase of phase 1 of our Connect TO rollout. We've put out to tender 4 priority service neighborhoods across the city, and we are currently reviewing submissions made by telecom, whether incumbent or non-incumbent service providers. There are 6 TCHC facilities that are in scope for phase 1, and that is currently under review right now. We are also working to explore an alternate means of securing capital funding to help TCHC provision in the in-suite connectivity program. And in terms of data collection, Nadia mentioned there are some significant gaps in what we know about the implications and consequences for households who are experiencing precarious broadband access. So we're working with a number of our HEI higher education partners in resolving those gaps, specifically around telecommunications total costs. So not looking independently at fixed broadband and then mobile separately. We need to look at them as a total combined cost within the households, and also looking at what households are experiencing in terms of their struggles to maintain those services. So Nadia touched on that. Are we dealing with scenarios where residents and service subscribers are having to do without other basic needs in order to keep the internet service alive within their households? And the Community Librarian Project is also another initiative that Connect TO has been involved in, and I'll let Nadia speak further to that.
So because we were able to secure common space internet access in many of our buildings through the rollout that Boyd spoke to, Toronto Public Library was able to reach out to us through Connect TO to establish a community librarian project pilot that will start in January in the northwest area of the city, focusing on 190 Woolner as well as the Falstaff buildings. And it will provide a community librarian that will come into the common common space and offer library services to tenants with a focus on families. And there will also be some computers donated to each of the buildings involved in the pilot. So that was an exciting outcome so far. So to conclude, the survey results are expected to come in December, at which point we will revisit the most effective channels for supporting tenants in the short term, while we continue to look at longer term options. We will continue to work with ConnectTO to explore further funding options, including, as Michelle mentioned, the subsidy options through various city divisions. We are looking to continue to work with city to provide a few hotel style, so that's the capital investment internet pilot sites. Hotel style meaning if you go into a hotel and you're able to sort of sign up from your unit level, that's something we're looking into for the spring of 2022. Increased communications and information sharing about internet package options for tenants, such as Connected for Success, will commence in the new year, and we're working closely with communications to make that happen. And lastly, we will continue the rollout of the Common Space pilot. So TCHC and ConnectTO remain committed to meaningful, equitable internet access for all TCHC tenants. But this must be done in a sustainable way that recognizes the needs of various TCHC households. So that concludes our presentation. I will stop sharing.
Thank you. Questions from committee members? Okay, I have a couple of questions. Darren, do we still have quorum? That's one question.
I can see yourself.
Is 3 quorum? I guess it is. There's 5 members, right? So we have quorum. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So questions. The reports basically says that 57.7% of tenants do not have any internet access. For those that do have internet access, is that principally furnished by Rogers?
So we were able to get some statistics from Rogers to speak to their level of connectivity for our tenants. We attempted to obtain that from other service providers, but we were unable to do so. So the data that's included in the report only speaks to Rogers connectivity. It doesn't speak to Bell or any other internet service provider. So the assumption is with Rogers having, I believe, 48% of connectivity, factoring in the other service providers, we're projecting a higher level of internet connectivity than 50%.
So how many service providers are there? There's more than just the top 3. How many service providers are there?
Boy, Michelle, I don't know if you have a sense of that. I don't.
Well, in Toronto, currently, if you're looking at non-dominant or non-facilities-based carriers, it averages between 10 or 12 in the city, but they're not evenly distributed.
So there's 10 or 12. So are we set, and is ConnectTO or are we set on having one service provider, or is there any reason why we couldn't have a dozen different service providers bringing internet?
That's a really great question, and it speaks to some other issues that have emerged that ConnectTO is directly involved in. So, for example, our phase 1 pilot in the 4 priority neighborhoods, this was a negotiated RFP approach that we took, open to vendors of all scale and scope. Okay. Whoever ends up being the successful vendor, I can't say, but no, it should not be. We should not be approaching. Our advice is to not pursue this in any sole source way. In fact, what has come up, we are engaged with other municipalities at GTHA regional planning tables, and there are concerns with some of the incumbent telcos who are engaging in contract negotiations with MDUs using exclusivity clauses that violate the Telecommunications Act. So there's a lot of concern there. So both principally, practically, and ethically, it should be open to a diverse range of potential suppliers. Unfortunately, the topography of the telecommunications service market in Toronto in particular means that there's no equitable distribution of non-dominant carriers operating within the city.
A lot of it is based on infrastructure.
Exactly.
Who owns the infrastructure to our specific buildings is really how a lot of that dictates.
Yeah, and that's where it's going to be the primary. It's going to be Bell and Rogers are the primary middle mile and backhaul owners there. So what we are exploring with ConnectTO are ways for the city to invest in its own middle mile or backhaul fiber infrastructure, but that's still years out in.
So if I just do a little search of internet service providers, there's a whole bunch of companies that come up that I've never even heard of, aside from Bell, Rogers, and Shaw. What's preventing us making known to our tenants, or or having some of these companies approach our tenants for, to offer packages and sort of bundling them together to get a better deal?
I'll answer that question. Typically, what's preventing it are market practices by the incumbents themselves, because the competitive service providers that you're seeing in your searches, they have to lease their capacity and their services from,
yes.
From
so for example, I there's one called Yak. I read, like what would prevent us from cutting a deal with a company like this or any other to say, we want you to provide for this collection of buildings, can you do it?
Yeah.
Or we put out an RFP where we get multiple respondents, and then we figure out who's best to provide the service in certain areas.
Yeah, you should be able to do that as long as no exclusivity agreements have been signed between the MDU and the and any service provider. So there's nothing ostensibly preventing the TCHC from doing that in a legal framework anyway. What is going to encumber that activity is that Yak, or whomever the service provider you're identifying, they ultimately have to purchase their services from Rogers or Bell. So what Rogers and Bell will do is they will engage in what are called prohibitive market practices, where they will increase the costs so to maintain the competitiveness or the attractiveness of their own service offerings. So we're dealing with a market that is not fairly distributed, both in terms of market.
So I won't belabor this point, but these other providers are able to provide economic, notwithstanding that they have to piggyback on somebody else's service, they are able to provide lower cost internet access than if I were to go through Bell or Rogers.
If the service is available to a tenant looking for it in a particular area. Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
That's a big if. That's a big if.
Okay, I don't have any further questions. Uba, Marcel, any questions? No? All right, so we'll just look for.
I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you to Sheila and the whole staff for providing this, and anyone else who from the city side is involved, because a lot of people cannot afford the expensive internet. So my hope is to see this will expand the full to everyone who resides in TCHC, but thank you so much.
Okay, so we just need a motion to approve, moved by Uba, please. Thank you. All in favor? All right. Thank you. All right, we can, Sonia, maybe you can tell Councillor Nunziata she's welcome to come back.
I've sent her a message on the chat.
Okay. And we now move to item 6E, the crisis priority transfer, and we have one deputant, Miguel Avila Ballarde. Miguel?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, thank you. I'm speaking on the agenda item on page 3 or 6 with regards to the scope and bullet point number 4, vacancy matching. That is the reason I'm appearing at this committee today. So back in 2012, I'm going to take you back to Throwback Thursday today. In 2012, my sister Joanne Connelly, an old activist for social housing, spoke at this board with the idea of swap homes model and the UK model, where tenants had the facility or the accessibility to transfer between under house and our house tenants. So here in Regent Park, this is the dilemma that we are going through. I know that this report is answering the questions raised by the Ombudsman in 2018, or well, in previous meetings, sorry. So you guys are complying with the request of the city ombudsman, which is fantastic. I totally agree with some recommendations needs to be made. But you know, we are living in a post-pandemic society, and things need to change, be more progressive. You know, Joanne Connelly wrote one time in an article that it is an issue that was welcomed by the board in 2012, but all of a sudden the enthusiasm and all the joy of providing this program, because it was available before through one of the agencies that prior to the city merging, you know, the great download by the province into the municipalities. The Ontario Housing Corporation, is that my understanding, Ontario Housing facilitated this process to swap units. Now, I want to talk about another important concern. Many young people in this community who live with their families still, they don't want to risk saying, my son and daughter who have already grown up, they're still living with me. And you know what? I understand people. I don't judge them. They're doing it because they're survivalists. They're trying to stay alive in this post-pandemic society. We need to be progressive. Housing Connections is the agency right now that is in charge of the internal transfers and accepting people from the outside in the long waiting list. As you know, it's 10 years long. So what happened is many young people, for instance, I was able to win my case with family court, and now my youngest daughter finally is on the lease agreement. So you see, I'm 56, so it means that I may consider qualified to move into a seniors only home. But the sad part is that I don't want to leave Regent Park because of my activities and activism. Sorry, I successfully secure funding for the tower renewal project of Regent Park. 220 Oak Street. So I am very heavily engaged with the construction firm, with the staff, and I don't want to leave this place. But my daughter feels that she wants her own independence, right? And she doesn't want to be uprooted from Regent Park. She wishes to stay here. So I wonder if I can challenge this committee to be more progressive and accept some recommendations from the community, because again, some families are not divulging how many members are in the homes, and we know it, but we don't want to destroy families. Rather we want to unite families together, and we believe in social cohesion. And here in Regent Park, these policies are just destroying the social cohesion that we're trying to build. You know,
Miguel, can I ask you to wrap up, please?
Yeah, we signed with you $26.8 billion in community benefits. Let's do something better to address the issue of that I addressed to you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions from committee members? No? Okay, thank you. Any questions on the report from staff on crisis priority transfers, item 6C? Okay, no questions. Motion to approve?
Yeah, I have a question.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
I was just trying to unmute.
Yeah.
And so if I heard correctly, Miguel was asking to reintroduce the swap. That's one thing that I got it. And I think that was a great idea. I don't know why we took out that choice. And crisis transfer, I have been talking about it a lot. Most of you know that by now. It has to be relooked, revised oftentimes we heard time and time clearly from tenants across the board that is saying, I have been transferred from one unsafe area to another unsafe area. I know we make a great progress, and I appreciate, thanks to Sheila and Jack and all the staff who's involved. But I would suggest if we can hold some units the same way that we hold some units when we're doing the revitalization and relocating people. Let's hold some units that are either like in safe, good areas, so people feel that their concern are taken into consideration. They've been heard, they've been supported. When I read the report, I am quite pleased to see all the additional support that we're providing in terms of counseling, in terms of connecting people to agencies and other extended supports. I'm very grateful. But I think the transfer, it can be much improved, and that's what I'm looking for. Another thing that is not within TCHC, but we can work with the city level and the city manager, is maybe to look into giving people SPP priority when they are abused and when they are human trafficked. So in other words, when someone is looking for internal transfer, if they cannot find, while they actually looking into that process, also external process will allow what I just said, which is to merge maybe the two transfer, the TRICE transfer with the SPP transfer. And if not, that's not doable, maybe to look outside the box and see if the city can allow those people to apply to access to housing and have the same special priority. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Was that a question or just a comment? Was that a question?
Question, comment, suggestion, question, what can be done?
Okay.
And either Sheila or Jack, any of you can comment on that. So it was a little bit of both suggestion and question, what can be done?
Jack?
Through the chair, and thank you for the question, comments, and thoughts. I believe our COO is listening intently. I know that we are looking at doing tenant transfer review, and I believe that this is part of the consideration as to what's going to be factored into that review.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheila and her team and Richard Grove. All of you did extended. You went and tried your level best to look into this issue, and Sheila, appreciate it, because you and I, we talked about this issue many times. So I'm looking forward to that. Improvement, more improvement. Thanks.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Uba. Okay, motion to approve the report. Uba? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Next item is community impact programs, which I held. And again, I'll just come back and reiterate what I had asked for before, and that if these programs, if there could be a breakdown by gender on who we are reaching through these programs. And the one question I had is, how many staff do we have? Do we have specific staff that work with these to generate these programs and oversee and work with these programs, or is it? Maybe you could just tell me about how the staffing works, Sheila.
Happy to. I believe Nadia Gavaya is on the line, and these programs, the delivery of these programs are designed centrally through her and her team, programs and partnerships, and then delivered locally in the regions with teams who have responsibility for oversight. But Nadia, I'll ask you to round that answer out, please.
Yes, so some of the programs are delivered through the local teams, so through the regional teams. Some others are delivered in partnership with community agencies, and some of them are actually designed and delivered locally as well. So we hire a lot of young people from our communities in senior program leader roles, and other frontline roles. And so the idea is that we are working with the community to get programming into their buildings.
Okay, and then I noticed that there's references to surveys in which 91% of parents believe the Rookie League had positively impacted their child's recovery, etc. 90% of those surveyed said that the program had helped move them closer to their employment and career goals. It would be good to know, 90% could be 9 out of 10. It would be good to know the number of respondents to these surveys, just to provide a little bit more insight and detail to know how, just, really how effective we're being, okay?
Absolutely.
Did anyone have any questions on the community impact programs? Oh, Sheila, you wanted to say something?
Just, Mr. Chair, we are bringing the community impact program to every TSC meeting, and we like to highlight a region, have a region speak to specifically what they're offering within their region. And we do have a brief presentation for you coming out of the central region and through the manager of community safety and support, if you would like to consider.
How long is brief?
I think, Lequa, you have 6 lines. Can you go quickly?
Yep, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, as of the committee and the senior staff today. So we're going to 10 to 15 minutes of your time to what we've been doing within the central region. You will notice presentation that there are 3 threads that we're weaving together. And these are youth voice, which is very important to us. Partner collaboration, particularly with the city, where we're trying to have greater alignment with initiatives that are coming out of the city, especially as it relates to violence reduction, and resident engagement. As Nadia already mentioned, there are many programs that we do that actually have young people who are residents of TCHC working alongside with us to provide the programming. I'm not sure if I can share my screen. I'm trying to share it now. Please let me know if you can see it.
There we go. Lequa, it's up.
Perfect. So within Central Region, we've been, like most other regions in the city, impacted by the COVID pandemic, which has required us to work differently and reach folks virtually with many of our programs. I was fortunate to be online to hear some of the seniors speak to how challenging it has been to be within virtual programs, but this is something that we had to do, and we did reach out to get some support to do so from the city. We'll also talk about some of the programs within our active living program, which Nadia spoke to, which are done in collaboration with many of our partners, and we do have folks that will speak to that. We're going to talk about how we're supporting safe spaces for young people, particularly within the Regent Park area, where we know that there has been a focus on violence as it relates to young people more recently. We have entrepreneurial programs as well, which are skill building programs that help and support young people who have an entrepreneurial mindset. And then last, we're going to talk about how we're reimagining space. We have a focus on our use of space agreements, cleaning that up, how we work with agencies that provide programs within our space. But there's other ways in which we can do it. And I have a team that's going to speak to this. So hopefully my team, you guys can turn on your cameras so people can see your faces. I'm joined today by Isa Ali, Rhea Brown, Jamal Berger, Christian Esposito, and Caitlin Wallace, who are going to speak about the programs that they're involved with. And I've got staff, Cassandra Coward and Harada to help us go for this. So Williams and Caitlin, can you tell me about the virtual program support?
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and thank you for having our team in this meeting. So our active living team in the Central Region has been thinking and rethinking the way that we do virtual programming since the lockdown started. One of this idea that was born from was to approach the City of Toronto Strategic Partnerships Office. We have a good relationship since 2016. We discussed some of the programs that we were planning on implementing. One of them was the Head Start and how this program could be supported, since not every resident or participant that we were expecting to be part of the program may or may not have a device. So through this partnership and a generous donation from TELUS Corporation in Samsung, Canada, we were able to secure 30 Chromebooks donated to TCHC. And to this donation, we have been working on promoting learning and engaging youth that started taking part in our programs, and even up to today, they are still part of our program. This donation is also aimed at providing some of the tools that online youth can access within our programs.
Thank you, Williams. So Caitlin, if you could tell the committee who you are, how you come to be a staff at TCHC, and a little bit about the Head Start program.
Yes, for sure. So, hello, my name is Caitlin Wallace, and I'm a senior program leader under the Active Living team in the Central Region. This is my 4th year working with Toronto Community Housing, and I previously was a tenant within a Toronto Community Housing community. Some of the work I do consists of planning and organizing and implementing programs for children and youth who reside in TCHC buildings. And one of the programs I had the privilege of organizing and leading is the Head Start program, which is a 6-week virtual arts program for youth ages 13 to 18 that live in Toronto Community Housing, with the objective of fostering an appreciation for all forms of art, which include photography, painting, music, dancing, and much more, and to get them to express themselves through art-based activities, games, and challenges. So with that being said, we noticed with data that was collected, and at the end of the program, we noticed majority of the participants were young women ages 13 to 16 who were attending on a consistent basis. So with that being said, in order for our team to keep these young women engaged in program, we decided to develop a program that was targeted to young women ages 14 to 19 that live in the Central Region, called Steps to Achievement, which is currently happening right now, which is a pre-employment life skills and recreation program for that age group and young women specifically. So the purpose of the program is to build capacity in these young women to make decisions and take actions on their own in terms of their financial literacy, health and wellness, and that can positively impact their lives.
Caitlin, thank you for sharing that. And John, this is in response to your wanting to know about the gender breakdown of the programming and also how we come to some of those decisions. In areas where there's a focus on violence, there typically is a focus on males. And even though we do have that focus, we don't want the girls to be feeling left behind. So Caitlin, thank you for sharing that. We also have been talking about safe spaces for young people. And I'm privileged to introduce Sarah Rogers and Issa Ali, who can tell you about an initiative that they did within Regent Park.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Rogers, and I am the program coordinator for the SCENE Collaborative. And we had some, during the pandemic, we had done some focus groups in the Regent Park community with young people. And one of the big things that came back was having access to safe spaces in the community. So we partnered with Toronto Community Housing, and myself and Issa through the YEY project had a pilot project over the summertime. And as you can see on the slide deck, we created a one-pager around the results of our program that we offered. And it was really just a space that's supported by workers in the community from various organizations, as well as Toronto Community Housing, to just have space for people to come and be supported in a positive environment, but not have to be doing something at the time in terms of, it's not about a workshop, or it's not about getting this skill set. We are building on that, but also it's just a safe space. And so as you can see from our one pager here, one of the big things that came out for us was the bar graph there that shows people feeling better when they left. And for us, that's a big win, especially as we're moving past through the pandemic. Isa, what would can you add on to that?
Hey everyone, my name is Isa and I'm the Youth Empower Youth project manager. The purpose of the project is to bridge the gap between vulnerable youth and programs and services. This project actually started when I started my career as a TCHC intern almost 2 years ago, and it grew. So the Safe Spaces project is a project to provide youth an informal space, which was informed from a survey that we actually did 1 year ago, and 175 in the youth shared their request for a space like this, where there's informal supports, where it's a place where youth can just gather, play some games, get together, and just enjoy their time after school and stuff like that. Something else was that we really noticed when we did this survey is that most youth came in feeling, and we asked them how did they feel after they were attending the program, and most of them said they felt a 10 when we did the scale from 0 to 10. And also, like, there was a request for a permanent space like this, and in general in the community in Regent Park, there's always been a request for safe spaces for youth in the community, and to have something like permanent, that's really important for youth. Sarah, if you want to add anything else.
Yeah, just quickly. So this was the pilot that we sort of funded through our various projects. The youth have now completed a grant, and they were successful in getting the grant. So this is now it's a youth-led agency and TCH supported venture, and so they've secured funding up until the end of the year to continue the partnership with TCH, but to run the space on a weekly basis. So that's a big success out of it as well. In terms of working with TCH, we've really valued the partnership. You know, it was a bit challenging to access the space and to secure the space. And we're still working on, you know, getting some Wi-Fi in the space for the young people to have, because now that school's back and job searching, we have computers there that we bring, but with no Wi-Fi, we're sort of working through that piece.
That was going to be one of my questions.
Oh,
So you just
yeah.
answered.
So go ahead. Oh, I did. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the application itself from TCH in terms of an agency or resident-led is a fairly lengthy process, and sometimes a barrier. I know that other residents have faced it as a barrier. We were able to work through it because we have lots of support and we have lots of resources. So I'm happy about that. But you know, moving forward, supporting and streamlining that process and having access to Wi-Fi with the various spaces in the neighborhood. And I think this project is speaking volumes to having, you know, possibly as we move forward in Regent Park and other neighborhoods in Toronto, is having access to a dedicated use space within the footprint of the actual neighborhood within TCH.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Sarah and Isa. And if you're paying attention, you will notice that we had Caitlin, a resident who was employed by TCHC as a senior program leader. You will notice that we have Isa, a resident who was employed as an intern and is now working in partnership alongside us. So moving on, we talked about people who've been employed by us, but what about people who one day want to employ us when they're entrepreneurs? So if you've seen the copy of the Tenant Loop this past month, then you would have seen this young woman, Raya Brown. Raya, can you tell us about Be Build brand and what it is that you won?
Hi, good morning, everybody. So my name is Raya Brown. I am a graduate social work student, but more so recently, I am the founder of Ray Soleil Naturals, a natural hair care and skin care company. I am an entrepreneur with the power to positively impact my community. And I've been empowered to do that through the Be Build brand, or B3. I am the winner of this summer, so summer 2021's cohort. And what B3 really is an opportunity for young people to explore and imagine a new path for them. It starts off with an idea, with a concept, and over the course of 10 to 12 weeks, participants work with mentors who are entrepreneurs themselves, business people themselves, and they're getting that special attention, that one-on-one there's a lot of access to learn these skills so they can be successful in, you know, paths that they might have not been able to envision themselves in. You get the access, and the program doesn't end after those 10 or 12 weeks. I keep in contact with my mentor now. I'm supporting other mentors and other entrepreneurs that I've met throughout the course of the program. I have nothing but good things to say, have passed along the flyer for the new cohort and continue to help out in any way that I can, because I truly think it's a great opportunity. Why should TCHC continue to support B3? Well, we aren't really taught business skills, and business skills aren't always accessible, and there's a clear need. Every program, whether that's the B3 or the IM series, is getting a lot of support. We're getting consistent faces showing up and thanking us and really coming and saying that they're learning and taking a lot away from the opportunity. And you can never go wrong with nurturing passions that young people have, giving them a place to channel their interests. And I think the next step in continuing to grow B3 is looking into maybe having a drop-in on a weekly basis. The programs run at certain times of the year, but during those gaps, when the programs aren't running, what are young people doing? Where are they accessing reputable and clear and understandable material on business and their pursuits? So that's potentially a next step in expanding and continuing to make B3 like a program that truly stands out.
Thank you, Rhea. And as you can see, I clearly need some of your hair products, so expect me as a customer sometime soon. B3 is one of the programs that Nadia spoke about, centrally developed, locally delivered. This is done through our Community Economic Development CSCs and the work that Nadia's team through the program development and evaluation does. Our next presenters are going to talk to us about some development that we're doing in Moss Park as related to the basketball court revival. So Jamal and Kristen, what are you doing at Moss Park?
Good morning. My name is Jamal, and I am a former resident of Regent Park. I grew up there. I've played on the court that I'm speaking about today since I was about 7 years old. And I'm super proud to be able to say that Christian and myself, co-founders of the Kickback Foundation, have been able to work with TCHC on this project. The Kickback Foundation essentially is, we're a nonprofit. We encourage kids to think outside of their lived experience, one soul at a time. The term soul refers to sneakers. We've been able to give out over 6,000 plus brand new and lightly worn pairs of sneakers over the course of our 5 years of running. And one thing we're really excited about is this basketball court. The basketball court was very, very high need in terms of restructuring and making it a safe space to play, because prior to this refurbishment, the fences were low, the ball would always go on the road, and parents didn't want their kids playing there because they'd always have to go on the road when the ball went over the fence. Now the place is safe, the kids are able to play, the fences are high, there's 2 exits, it's deemed a safe space. And the coolest part about this project is that next year, when the court is complete, in partnership with Puma, which is one of the sneaker brands that kids in the community look up to and really respect, we're going to have artwork on the court that was consulted and put together and kind of conceptualized with the help of kids from the community so that they feel like the court is theirs. We had 8 youth. There's three females and 5 males who helped us kind of put their ideas together as to what the court should look and feel like. And we took that into our consideration, and creatively we implemented an idea and a design that reflects the members of the community. So when the court launches, the thing that we're excited about with it being in partnership with Puma, which is a great opportunity and a first of its kind, we're going to see a huge community come together. We're going to be able to give out hundreds of pairs of sneakers to both boys and girls, and we're going to be able to run a safe, inclusive event that is on a main street. Queen Street East is like, there's a lot of people that pass by that street of all demographics, and the coolest thing about that is we're able to rewrite the narrative of this community front facing.
Thank you, Jamal. We're so proud and excited to be working with the Kickback. And part of what has happened through this engagement is the Kickback and the community young people that they're working with get to interact with our facilities management folks, working with design and engineering and landscaping, getting involved with the architectural pieces, everything to do with how we take a project like this from A to Z. Folks who are hearing about this work in the East region are consulting with the Kickback to support them with the court over there. And in St. Jamestown, we're thinking about a court which used to be called the Nike Court. What can we do to bring corporate attention and sponsorship to that court as well? So this is how we're going to be reimagining what we're doing with spaces, where we're looking at naming rights. We're looking at an opportunity for young people to be better engaged. When we say bring vibrancy to your community, there's no better way to do it than with something like this. So with that, this concludes our presentation. We do have another young person who's joined us. If folks have any questions about youth spaces or any of the programs that you've heard, please feel free and we're here to answer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Any questions from members of the committee? All right, okay. Thank you again for the presentation. Seeing no questions of staff, a motion please to approve the Community Impact Programs report. Moved by Councillor Nunziata. All in favor? Thank you. Next item, we have a deputant. Again, we have Miguel back to talk about the tenants complaints process. Miguel, are you on the line? I don't think he's on the line this time.
I see a chat message from Ms. Fung that when she tried to contact him, they were disconnected and she's trying to reconnect with him.
All right, are there any questions from members of the committee on the tenants complaint process? Okay, seeing none, we'll have a motion to approve and then we can get Miguel back later if he chooses to do so. Motion to approve, Councillor Nunziata, all in favor? Thank you. Councillor Nunziata? You're muted.
Item 5 held down?
I beg your pardon?
Was item 5 held down?
No, it wasn't.
No? I thought it was. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So, Mr. Campbell, Mr. Avila is on the line if you for his deputation.
Okay. Okay, Miguel, tenant, you're talking now about the tenant complaint process update.
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this item. I will be directing my comments on page 2 of 5, the internal processes. On this agenda item, there is an attachment or probably a flyer that inform the tenants about how to resolve complaints. The common complaint categories in this flyer shows that antisocial behavior are one of the most common. I believe that interrelationships between tenants is one of the largest source of complaints that TSC officers have to deal in on a regular basis. And I believe that is about 80% of all the complaint numbers. We need to offer more mediation services, is my suggestion to you, because it is, I don't know, because of the pandemic, the number of lockdowns we have experienced in the last while, people are on the edge and they're very irritable, they're very judgmental, they are very disappointed with the whole situation with the world and with life. So again, looking at the flyer that is attached to the report, the issue of pets is one of the second largest complaints that the TCHC receives in large numbers. Why are we dedicating our time to investigate pet complaints instead of, because it appears to be a duplication of services when we had to contact Toronto Animal Services. I think we should streamline this process instead of making it so absurd when it comes to complaints that happen outside the TCHC property. I mean, hearing complaints that people come to TCHC about individuals that was walking her dog outside of the TCHC property. So that means that has to be investigated by Toronto Animal Services instead of being put as a discipline as a complaint to a resident. So those are my suggestions for you as a committee to have a conversation. I want to thank my good friend Uma. Sorry, and I want to thank you also for the Wi-Fi policy that is coming down the pipeline for TCHC buildings. That they struggle financially to have access to the internet and hopefully participate in this engaging conversations online. And also, I am surprised, and I want to congratulate to the previous speakers on the important item on the agenda about how to engage with the youth and the community. This is wonderful programs that it needs to be put us always in the front burner and the front to deal with issues to help our youth. So thank you so much.
Okay, Miguel, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us, Miguel. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay.
Thanks.
Next item we have up is the OACH biannual report, and we should have Miss Cynthia Summers, I believe.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
There you are. Okay, good. This is the biannual update as opposed to the quarterly update.
Yes, the first ever.
Right.
And with the board's consent, what I thought I might propose is that I combine my discussion of the systemic report with the biannual report, primarily because the work overlaps.
That sounds perfect to me.
Perfect. Okay. The one thing I'll note, and I'm welcome to all questions, I'm not going to take a lot of time. In fact, I'd like to leave time for questions. The one thing I'll note from the biannual report is just that a very positive outcome. The work continues at OACH through the pandemic. 81% of the tenants who were referred to us avoided eviction. And we worked with 278 families in the first half of the year. You'll note in that report that I began reporting out specifically on systemic recommendations that I've made. And you'll recall from the board meeting in June of this past year that the board requested that I review the data of the OACH going back to when the last systemic report was provided to the board, which took us back to 2019. So I'll just go over the highlights of the systemic report and the findings. I want you to know that in preparing this report, I provided all the raw data to TCH. They also had, of course, a good month or so to put together a response, and I know that you'll see their response following my presentation. The report is a little unusual in that I'm presenting it to you and to the board as a whole for information, but also for the approval of an expansion of the OACH mandate. And I'll give you more information about that as we go through the report and the overview. But I can tell you right off the bat that this is a recommendation that was actually brought to me by the Toronto Ombudsman and also by the acting CEO, now COO of Toronto Community Housing. A quick overview of the systemic report. Since 2019, since August 2019, I've issued 3,271 systemic reports or recommendations to TCH to improve the work and increase the excellence of service provided to tenants at TCH. To make the work more understandable and more usable information, I've taken these recommendations and I've put them into 4 theme-based audit recommendations. My goal here is that I will continue to use these themes when reporting out. This allows TCH and the OACH to have an understanding of what we're talking about. We're using the same language, and to be able to effectively look at the challenges and say, which category does this challenge fall into? So I won't go into all the details. I'm sure you've read the report, and I'm available to discuss the details. But the 4 themes are administrative delays and inefficient use of resources, non-compliance with policies and procedures, unreliable internal information, and quality of service to tenants. The report is also has been set up in 3 sections because I wanted to provide to the board an understanding of how I provide my recommendations to TCH. And there's a few methods. First of all, I issue reports on every file that is referred to the Office of the Commissioner. In this case, there were over 3,000 files that we reviewed in this period of time. So I communicate these recommendations through the reports. Another way that I communicate systemic process and procedure recommendations is through collaboration with TCH. As you're aware, the terms of reference say that when working on policies that affect vulnerable persons or seniors persons, TCH will invite OACH to participate in those discussions. You'll see, looking at the 6-month report and the systemic report, that there's been a lot of consultation and collaboration on policies this year. Work such as the arrears collection process, the quick referral pilot, the hubs, and the one that I'm going to take a moment to focus on is the pre-eviction pilot. The reason that I'm going to take a moment to focus on that one is that pilot is what has led to a discussion between TCH, the Ombuds, and myself around the idea that OACH should be actually reviewing files of all tenants at TCH who are facing eviction. The final section of the report talks about the next steps. These are me as commissioner taking the opportunity now to provide new recommendations for TCH going forward. And I think they cover the key areas that TCH is hoping to work on and that I've identified should be worked on. And these are in the areas of training, monitoring of systemic recommendations, and that means not just documenting that the Commissioner's Office made a recommendation, but following up on what were the next steps and what was the resolution of that recommendation. And last but not least, a recommendation that given the findings of this systemic review and given the findings of the pre-eviction mandate or pilot, I apologize, that the mandate be changed and expanded for the OACH. The pre-eviction pilot, you may recall, started as the result of some media coverage and concern about some tenants who had been evicted. And the then acting CEO approached me along with the City of Toronto Ombuds and asked if I could do an audit of those files. Following the audit, I was approached and asked if, as a pilot, the OACH could work with TCH to review all files that had already gone through the entire eviction process, but were at the point of being filed with the sheriff for the actual eviction. We were happy to help and happy to work closely with TCH to conduct the pilot. And although the pilot runs until December 31st, I can report out, and TCH is aware and concerned as I am, that 30% of the files that the OACH reviewed, even though they had gone through the entire process, had such significant errors that, in my opinion, had the general manager known of these issues, they would not have proceeded to eviction. They would have stopped the eviction process and worked with the tenants. In these cases, I'm very happy to report that in each of these cases where I found these concerns, TCH has stopped the eviction process and they've been working with the tenants to resolve the issues. But given that fairly high number of 30%, along with a review of the systemic recommendations, which of course resulted out of concerns noted, challenges with the process. It's my opinion that all tenants could benefit from a review by OACH prior to proceeding to the Landlord Tenant Board. So I'm in agreement with TCH and the city ombuds. I'll finish this by saying the reason that I'm putting this request to you is that I think it's beneficial to tenants, obviously, if they have the opportunity to save their tenancy and to have underlying issues addressed early. That's good for their quality of life. It's good for equity and fairness if all tenants living at Toronto Housing have this extra layer of safety. But it's also very good for Toronto Housing because it addresses arrears quickly, so arrears don't continue to increase. And it also protects the organization because what has happened and what I've noticed this year is if a file is, if a tenant is worked with through the entire process, and then they get to the point where the sheriff's about to be called, and then an error is discovered, what happens is it's good for the tenant in the sense that the eviction is stopped, but TCH is often in a position where they're going to lose their legal right to those arrears because the order issued by the Landlord Tenant Board is only good for 6 months and it will expire. So it's much better for TCH to deal with these issues early in the process. And of course, if eviction is warranted, then to follow through that process and be able to proceed. So that's my overview of the systemic report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, so we'll turn to the committee. Uba, Francis, where is, oh, then there's Marcel. Any questions from members of the committee? Okay, I've got a couple of questions.
Sorry. Cynthia, thank you for that comprehensive
There you go.
report. You mentioned the time frame that would help if the referendum was earlier and what have you. What are we talking about? Are we talking about 3 months, 6 months, 1 year?
So the current arrears collection process says that all tenants in the second month, arrears need to be addressed. Right now, for seniors and vulnerable persons only, those tenants are referred to the OACH, and the OACH works with them up to 45 days. And then the file is referred back to TCH to continue working with the tenant or to proceed to eviction. What's happening right now with the family portfolio is that those families are not referred to OACH. So they proceed through the process without the intensive intervention and without the oversight and audit of the OACH. So what I'm proposing is that we just treat all tenants the same. One of the other challenges we identified, Sheila and I identified, was that it is very difficult because of invisible mental health challenges and invisible health challenges in general to identify who is vulnerable. Some people don't want people to know that they're vulnerable. Because of this, we're finding an underreporting of vulnerability. And in the review of some of these files that have gone right up to the point of the sheriff, some of those tenants are definitely vulnerable, but it was an invisible vulnerability. So by changing the process to say that all people living in Toronto Housing have this opportunity to be referred to the OACH. And by the way, it's voluntary. Tenants can decline the work of OACH and the assistance. But by doing this, we won't inadvertently overlook vulnerable persons living in Toronto Housing.
Anything further?
I think that's a good idea. It's gonna be more holistic. So I agree with you on Sheila to look into all families rather than some portions of our tenants. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, I've got a few questions. Cynthia, so staff referred from January to June, staff referred 278 files to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you said did you say around 30% had errors?
Well, so the figure you're providing is from the 6-month report, which is just usual referrals.
Right.
So let me just, but of the files that we reviewed in regards to the last moment before the sheriff, we have reviewed 37 of those. And of those 37, 30% had errors.
Okay. Okay, so let me come back to the first number. So 278 households were referred to OACH. How many are, so 81%, I'm confused here because you have 278 households were referred to OACH, but then you said in this period of time, 81% of these households avoided the need for eviction.
Mhm.
And the number is 197 out of 243, not 278. That's on page 5 of 15 of your report on page 151 of the agenda.
Thank you.
The numbers don't quite match. You said 278 were referred to OACH,
Right.
but then
They'll
you,
always, sorry.
197 of 243 avoided eviction.
Yeah, there'll always be a proportion of files that are, the referral number will always differ from the number that we worked with.
Oh, okay, of course, because of timing issue, right?
Also because some tenants will refuse our assistance
Okay.
or will go to work with the person and find out that they've moved out of the unit. So there's circumstances. So that number will never align perfectly.
So, from that number, 197 of 243, am I to understand that 46 households were evicted?
Yes.
And do all evictions cross? I gather the answer is no, but do all evictions cross your desk, your office's desk before the eviction occurs?
Yes, in fact, they should cross my desk very early in the second month of the process.
But that you're only dealing with seniors and vulnerable persons. What about other persons who just get evicted?
So those people don't cross my desk to stay with that idea. So the challenge is seniors are easy to identify based on their age. So I can confidently say that all seniors who are facing eviction due to arrears will be offered the services of OACH. And then those tenants who are identified as vulnerable will also get the services of OACH. So we've got a portion of tenants who are vulnerable, who aren't identified, who go directly through the process to eviction. And then we've got everyone identified as a family going directly. And there's some discussion around that issue too, because in those families, there's a lot of single parents, low-income single parents, and they're not necessarily identified as vulnerable. They're identified as part of the family portfolio.
Okay, and on the next page, I note that that's page 152 or page 6 of 15. It seems that the numbers are headed in the wrong direction in that the average arrears at the time of referral has gone up. And the average month of referral to OACH has increased from 12 months to 14 months.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so Jag, I mean, so in my mind, the fact that you had 278 households referred to OACH, is that an indication that the job is not being done properly by our staff to have these files referred to the OACH?
Through the chair, and thank you for the question. And I would ask the COO to join me in the response. But I think what it is a reflection of work in progress in using the OACH's services effectively to inform our processes and the changes that we would make in order to systemically correct for some of the deficiencies that have been identified through the reviews. And so, although the numbers are certainly there and the challenge is, as you have articulated, what this is certainly an effort for us to learn from the reviews that are being done through the OACH and in order to inform our process changes in order to prevent for the same sort of challenges to happen from happening in the future.
So is it just that our staff doesn't have the time to devote to these files and Cynthia's staff does?
Can I, if I could, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair?
sure.
The analogy that I'd like to use is a GP and a specialist, right? So our tenant service coordinators who have carriage of these files, they have carriage of the tenancy from lease signing through to whatever reason the tenancy ends. They encounter families, youth, in families, seniors, vulnerable tenants who require a lot of time to help resolve their issues. So they're managing 300 to 400 files. When
Right.
they come up with someone who has deep issues, our goal is to have that family referred to OACH, who have the TROs who can do the deep dive, like a specialist, fix the issue. And then when the tenancy has returned to good health, return it back to the tenant service coordinator, which is why Cynthia and I are recommending that all files be reviewed by OACH prior to the L1 being issued.
Got
so
it.
that
Okay.
we catch those individuals, work with them effectively, get them on repayment agreements, maintain their tenancies, or if there are instances of individuals simply not paying their rent that have the means to pay the rent, they're screened and identified for eviction.
Okay, and I mean that's a great analogy, you know, the GP and the right, and the specialist.
But through the chair, if I could just add a little more, but I
Sure.
think the opportunity though is to learn and put those factors or the learnings in place so that hopefully over time we would see a change in essentially what's arriving at the OACH's desk, because there certainly are learning opportunities for us to adjust our processes for.
And
Right.
so that hopefully fewer files have to go to them, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And if I could, this time period that you're referring to in Cynthia's report, page 6 of 15, this is Q1 and Q2, the new arrears collection process, where we took those learnings that Cynthia has outlined very clearly in her document. We have a new arrears collection process that was implemented in June. So you'll see in the work plan that OACH has prepared, ongoing audit of that new work plan. And to Jake's point, are those changes effective in driving the statistics in the area that we, it's right there.
Okay, got it. Okay.
And if I could just add to that, with the new arrears collection process, you know, our auditing role, we have to be flexible and nimble. And we're going to be changing even what we audit. For example, in this new plan, the TSC and the frontline staff are expected to give a more intensive focus on the tenants and really get to know them to identify underlying issues. And we're going to, at the OACH, be auditing the actual things that they're supposed to do. For example, contacting their social worker, contacting ODSP. And we're going to have a list of things that, as part of that engagement with the tenant, they should be doing. And that's a bit more of a micro analysis than we've done in the past, but that will be able to give really real-time information back to TCH on this is what the frontline people are struggling with, this is where they're excelling. And because I meet systemic recommendations don't just come through reports I make. I meet with TCH management every month, and I've got to say at least once a week we have an additional meeting of some type. So as this real-time information is coming out, I can convey that so they can be nimble and quick in responding to training needs. And I can tell you, we just had a meeting earlier this week where management said, you know, we've got to go back and do a bit more training on this item we were talking about. So I think it's a fairly fluid situation where information is going back and forth.
Okay, great. Thank you. And
sorry, just one quick thing. As we roll out the hubs and the tenant service coordinators are actually working in the buildings where the tenants live, we'll be able to action more effectively Cynthia's recommendation that our tenant service coordinators have more direct contact with tenants. So we're actioning that as well.
Okay, last question I have is it's found on page 172 of the agenda, and it's on 11 of 17 of the systemic recommendations report. And it said that the notice to terminate tenancies should be served consistently and served early in the process between the 13th and 15th calendar day of the first month in arrears. So does that mean if I don't pay my rent on December the 1st, I'm going to be given an eviction letter right before, like on the 15th of December? Or does that mean on the 15th of January?
No, December. So if December 1st, the rent isn't paid, between December 13th and 15th, you'll get your notice indicating that your rent is owed, along with a letter. Frontline staff retain the opportunity, if they know the tenant and know they need extra support, they can reach out anytime they want between the 1st and the 10th, should they wish.
But is that an N4?
Yes.
So you get it. So if you're a couple of days late, you're going to get it. Like if you're a couple of weeks late, you're going to get an eviction notice?
Yes, you will get the notice, and I know that some people see that as harsh.
I was going to say it's a little, severe, So what if somebody's on vacation, I mean, if these people are, can even take vacations because of, their limited means, right? But what if somebody's away for a family emergency,
Well, in those situations, the frontline staff would reach out to the tenant, identify they're not available, refer to OACH. So it actually wouldn't end up in an eviction for sure if someone simply was off. But a lot of time and thought went into that timeline. Like, as you know, John, sorry, Tara.
No, John's good.
I used to serve on the landlord tenant board, and I really believe in fair process. And I think consistency in process gives all tenants, inside and outside of TCH, a level of fairness because they know what to expect. We didn't make it earlier, and I know I'm sort of speaking on behalf of TCH, and I was a separate person giving input. But if it's too early, you do get people who are just a couple days late. They've had challenges, or their pay came in a couple days late. But we wanted to make it early enough not to penalize tenants, but to give them lots of time to work with TCH to resolve the arrears, and to give the frontline staff more time than they've ever had before to actually work closely with the tenants. A culture of sort of just a door knock and that's it. We're trying to change that culture to, no, you're a service provider working with tenants and you're going to try to help them resolve the arrears. The other challenge that we considered, and in making this decision, was we also don't know, there's a history of arrears going on and on and on forever. And we thought there needed to be a consistent point where the tenant gets lawful notice that your tenancy could be at risk. This is really important. Let's work together. And the final thing I'll say on this that I'm quite pleased about is there used to be a letter that went out to tenants that was extremely harsh regarding arrears of rent. And that letter, with some consultation with tenants as well, was rewritten. So along with this formal legal notice comes a more friendly letter saying, we know you need assistance. We see that you're in arrears.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. All right, so if there are no other questions, any other questions from committee members on this?
Sorry, John.
Yeah. Go ahead, Uba.
Just to continue that question, I remember the letter used to come to people sometimes the 11th day. So if they didn't pay by the 11th day, that you're going to be evicted if you don't pay this. Are we saying we change that to that letter to a friendly letter that doesn't mention eviction but says pay your rent, or it could be consequences? I didn't get that quickly.
So if I could, Madam Director, the eviction notice is there, but what is on top of that eviction notice is an offer to come in and meet and figure out why, what the issue is that is causing the delay in payment of rent, so that we can identify and problem solve very early. Because someone that's 1 month in arrears, we're able to work with, get a repayment agreement going. If necessary, bring in some additional supports, resources. Someone that's 6 months in arrears, 12 months in arrears, it gets very much more difficult. So we're trying to work with tenants to maintain their tenancies, to have them understand that rent has to be paid, but work with them if they have issues and problems, catch them early, offer supports. So it is a recommendation that we considered at great length with the Office of the Housing Commissioner, and we think we're on a good path. We'll roll this out through the hubs, and we will monitor, track it, and hopefully see tenancies maintained, arrears come down, and people's lives generally improved.
Thank you, Sheila. I know for a fact, because I manage a housing project, so I know compared to other service providers like co-ops, private nonprofit, other entities that provide homes, we are actually doing an amazing job compared to those, because in some area, if you don't pay the first or the second, you get that letter and then things follow. But also I would like to see, and I don't know if it's possible, maybe to change that eviction, because a lot of times what happens is people see eviction and then they start panicking. And that creates a lot of anxiety, unnecessary anxiety for people, because as all the good things that you just say, we are here to support people to be housed and not create homelessness and meet people where they at and meet their needs. So I was wondering if we can maybe reward or change that. At the end of the day, I mean, people gotta pay their rent, period, right? but a lot of it creates a lot of anxiety. I had to explain a lot of people, this does not mean you're gonna be evicted tomorrow. This means pay your rent, and if you need the support, people are there to support you. But that eviction, word, it's creating a lot of anxiety, as I said. So I don't know if that can be taken into consideration. I mean, I don't know how we can work around that. But
Uba, have you ever seen a copy of the letter?
Yeah.
You have, okay. I have not. I've never seen it.
The one, it absolutely does cause anxiety. And I think that's, I've spoken to tenants in tears, so I've seen this firsthand. And I've seen people at the tribunal in tears, and it's definitely scary to face an eviction notice. Part of the challenge, I think, is I want people to be aware, though. I want them to know the real situation they're in. And my wish for TCH was that consistency be achieved, so that everyone, it would become less scary if everyone knew, oh, my neighbor had challenges last month. They got one of these notices on the 13th. And you know what? TCH worked with them and they're okay. One of the, dare I say, and it's the wrong word, it's not the word benefit, but one of the good things that come out of a bad situation when someone is served this notice now with this letter offering help is that sometimes that's the only opportunity that the frontline staff, or if it comes to OACH, the OACH staff, are going to have to actually understand the challenges that tenant is facing and actually provide them with supports, whether it's a voluntary trustee or a social worker. This problem comes to light through this process, and hopefully the tenant walks away from this process with more supports in their life and more stabilization and less anxiety. But there's no getting around the fear that's
I think it's probably a topic worthy of additional discussion at another time. And I think I'm mindful of the time. Francis, did you have something you wanted to add?
I just have the one question. Maybe you can bring a copy of that notice to us so we can see it, and this friendly letter. I think that would help. so we know what the tone of the letter is. And, you know, maybe in the letter, I don't know what the letter says, but maybe rent is overdue or something like that. I don't know. I think that we need to see that letter before.
I was going to make that suggestion. Derek, could that be an undertaking by staff to have that on the next Tenant Services Committee agenda? Copy of the letter and the nature of the communication that goes out to tenants who are in arrears.
We'll include it as an action item for that meeting.
Okay, because I think once we see that letter, then we can determine, like, you know, if we want to reword it a bit, and, you know, so that's what I think I'd like to see.
Okay, so little business to do. So first of all, we need a motion to receive the OACH biannual update, which is item 7A. Motion to receive.
Motion to approve.
To approve
Oh, sorry,
the biannual
receive.
update?
Sorry, receive
To
and forward
receive,
to the
right.
board for its information.
Yeah, okay, so that's moved by Councilor Nunziata. All in favor? And then we need a motion to approve the 7B, the OACH Systemic Recommendations Report, and whereby it will sort of broaden the mandate to include all, you know, persons who are having a little difficulty paying their rent. Then I suppose. Uba, you want to move that, or Marcel, do you want to move that? Okay, moved by Uba. All in favor? And then lastly, we have the work plan is for approval. That's item 7C. Moved by Marcel. How's that? Marcel, all in favor? Great. And then the last item is the item that Councillor Fletcher wanted to hold, but she's texted me and said her event is carrying on longer. Maybe we could just move that on to the next agenda, Dara?
We will.
We could do that. So we'll hold that, move to hold that, and reconsider that on the next meeting. That sound good?
Do we have somebody move that?
Moved by Councillor Nunziata. All in
Thank you.
favor? All right, and then a motion to adjourn is always in order. Moved by Councillor Nunziata. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you to staff. Thank you for the presentations. And we will see you soon. Thank you.